She was hung by her hands all night until he cut her down and faced the town alone. The wind carried no scent that night, only cold. Cold like iron and bone, cold like the silence that stretches just beyond sorrow. Cole Maddox rode through it, hat low, shoulders hunched, his mare's hooves striking a rhythm too steady for comfort. The trail had ended miles back, swallowed by scrub and dark, but he kept on, past the sage and the old riverbed where nothing flowed anymore. He hadn't planned on stopping, not in this part of Wyoming, not where his name still stirred whispers in saloons and spooked horses in their stalls. But the moon was full, and the desert spoke. It pulled at the reins, drew him westward off the path and into something colder than night. He saw her in the hollow of 3 bent cottonwoods, their branches gnarled like fingers refusing to forget. She hung beneath the largest one, arms stretched above her, tied to a thick limb with old hemp rope. Her toes barely brushed the earth, and even that seemed cruel, like hope pretending it could hold her up. Cole's breath left him sharp, not because he hadn't seen cruelty before. He had, more than most, but because of the way her body had surrendered to it, silent, unmoving, yet not broken, not fully. He dismounted, boots sinking into cracked dirt. The mare let out a quiet snort, unsettled. He unhooked his knife slowly, reverently. There was something sacred in the stillness. Or maybe it was cursed. He couldn't yet tell. Up close, the moonlight gave her form, dress torn at the sleeves, dirt clinging to her legs, blood dried in rivulets down her forearms. Her face was turned, caught in profile. She was young, but not fragile. Number. Even in the ruin, she held a kind of still dignity. He whispered, voice like ash, "If you're breathing, miss, give me a sign." Nothing. But then, a twitch, a slight flinch in the fingers. "I got you," he said, more to the air than to her. "Ain't no devil gonna claim you tonight." He stepped closer. The rope was frayed where it met the bark. Someone had hung her to suffer, not to kill quick. His hands shook as he worked the blade into the knot. He'd seen what towns could do when they felt righteous. He'd ridden with them once, long ago, before his soul split clean down the middle. The final strand snapped, and her body fell. He caught her hard, almost lost his footing. She was light, too light, like pain had burned away everything but skin and bone. Her head rested on his shoulder, her breath faint and fast. He carried her to the fireless ground and laid her gently beside a patch of dry grass, pulled off his coat, draped it around her. The moon caught her face now, dust-streaked, blood at the temple, lashes long and unmoving. "What did they do to you?" he whispered, brushing hair from her cheek. She stirred then, lips parting just enough to let out the weakest sound. "Cold," she breathed. He swallowed hard. "I know." Cole sat there for a long while, his back against the tree that had tried to end her, his rifle across his lap, watching the dark beyond the grove, waiting for ghosts or men, whichever came first. Behind him, the tree creaked with the weight it no longer held, and the night, for the first time in hours, began to shift. By morning, the air had turned thin, not lighter, just stretched, like breath held too long. Cole moved before the sun crested the ridge, before the wind could carry rumors faster than boots. He had a plan, though he didn't call it that. Plans belonged to men who trusted what came next. Cole trusted very little. She was awake when he brought the canteen to her lips, not fully, but enough to flinch at touch. Her eyes opened halfway, murky, cautious, dark as silt. She drank small sips, swallowed with effort, then looked at him like he was another kind of rope. "I ain't here to hurt you," he said again. Voice low, truth steady. Her wrists were raw, swollen and torn from the rope's grip. He wrapped them with the cleanest cloth he had. She didn't speak, but she didn't stop him either. That was all the permission he needed. He packed slowly, cradled her into the saddle like a bundle of broken bird bones. She didn't resist, just leaned forward into the horse's mane, eyes closed, lips pale. By the time they reached the edge of Harper's Bend, the sun was high and sharp. Towns like this never forgave quietly. The streets were too straight. The windows watched. Cole felt it the moment his boots touched dirt, judgment thick as coal smoke. The girl didn't lift her head, didn't move. Draped in his coat, she looked small, unthreatening. But he knew better. The people here would not see a girl. They would see the shame of their justice undone. They passed the general store first. Old man Denton looked up from his crate of onions and froze. His wife appeared in the doorway behind him. Their silence clung to Cole's back like a noose. Next, the blacksmiths. Hammer paused mid-swing. The clink of iron faded. Cole kept walking, didn't speed up, didn't flinch. "She was up on your cottonwood," he called, not turning around, "tied like a damn scarecrow." No one answered, but the silence swelled. At the saloon, two men stepped out onto the boardwalk. One leaned against the post. The other reached for something behind his belt. Cole stopped, turned slow. "She alive?" the leaning one asked. "Barely," Cole said, "and she's riding with me now." "Why?" Cole met his gaze, unblinking. "Because no one else did." The man spit. "She a thief?" "No." "Murderer?" Cole looked at the girl, her face slack against the horse's neck. "Not of anything worth more than mercy." A beat. The man behind the post nodded once. Not in agreement, just acknowledgement. They moved on, past the church where the bell didn't ring, past the sheriff's office where no badge glinted in the sun. Cole didn't ask for help. He wasn't fool enough for that. But when he reached the edge of town, when the last fence post was behind him, he let out a long breath. One he hadn't meant to hold. He found a narrow bend of river 2 miles out, let the horse drink, lifted her gently from the saddle and laid her in the shade. She stirred, winced. "You brought me through," she said. Her voice was sand and broken shells. "I did. They saw. I know." She closed her eyes again, and this time her hand found his, weak but willing. The wind shifted upstream, carried the scent of wheat and gun oil. Cole squeezed her fingers once, then scanned the horizon. He'd made it out of Harper's Bend alive, but that didn't mean they were safe. And the next time someone reached for a rope, he'd be standing in the way. The river carved slow whispers through stone, the kind of sound that fills silence without stealing from it. Cole sat nearby, whittling a piece of pine with his knife, not because it needed shaping, but because his hands needed something to do besides tremble. The girl, no, the woman, lay curled beneath his coat, her limbs drawn in like she was still hanging. Sleep tugged at her, but the kind that doesn't rest, the kind that waits for pain to finish speaking. He watched her, careful not to stare, careful not to pity. She'd earned more than that. When she opened her eyes, she did so slowly, like waking was a test. Her gaze drifted to him, then to her hands, wrapped in the cloth he'd tied with fingers, still stained from the blood that wasn't his. "I dreamed of rope," she said. Her voice was a scrape on wood. "Of rope and men laughing." Cole said nothing, just lowered the knife. Let her speak. "They brought me from Sweetwater 3 nights ago. Said I stole whiskey from the freight wagon. I hadn't. Didn't matter. I wouldn't go with them." She looked at the river, like it might take the rest of her story and carry it downstream. "They dragged me by the hair, called me all the things men call when they want to feel bigger than dirt." She touched her throat gently. One of them had a wedding ring, another smelled like tobacco and rotten apples. Cole's jaw clenched. "They asked me to apologize. I wouldn't." She turned toward him, eyes suddenly hard. "They needed someone to hang so they could sleep easy, so they picked the one who wouldn't kneel." He swallowed, his throat like gravel. "I don't want your sorrow," she added, "but I'll take your rage, if you've got any left." Cole stood slowly, tossed the carved piece of wood into the fire pit, unlit though it was. "You got a name?" he asked, soft but clear. "Wren," she said. "My father named me, said I sang more than I cried." Cole nodded, like it was a truth he'd known all along. "I'm Cole Maddox." "I know," she said. "They whispered it when they tied me up. said maybe the outlaw would come home and find another cause to lose. He chuckled, but it was humorless. They were half right. She studied him a long moment. Why'd you come back? You had no stake in this. He walked to the edge of the water, let his boots sink slightly into the mud. I used to be a man who watched things burn, watched folks hang, watched the good die, and did nothing because it wasn't my neck in the noose. He turned back to her. But if I die this time, it'll be for something worth bleeding for. Wren sat up, wincing as her shoulders rebelled against motion. You really think you can face a town like that and walk away? No. He crossed the distance between them and crouched beside her. But maybe I don't need to walk away. Maybe I just need to stand still long enough for them to see who they tied to that tree. She blinked, the fire in her dimming but not dying. Then let's give them a name to fear. Cole smiled, not wide, not cocky, just enough to be dangerous. They already have, he said, and above them a hawk circled, silent, watching, waiting. The town looked smaller the second time around, not physically, but in spirit. The shine was gone. The wooden signs and tin roofs, once symbols of order, now resembled stage props, fragile masks for men who hid their fear behind rope and ritual. Cole rode in slow, hat pulled low, Wren behind him, wrapped in his coat but sitting upright this time. She wasn't hiding, not anymore. The bruises still lined her wrists, her lip still split, but her eyes, they cut clean. They made no speech, no warning, just hooves on dirt and silence that dared anyone to break it first. They stopped in front of the church. The bell hung motionless, even as the wind kicked up from the east. Cole dismounted first, then offered his hand to Wren. She took it without flinching, stepping down like she was walking into fire with bare feet and no hesitation. A few folks had gathered, the shopkeep, the barber, one of the women from the seamstress corner. All eyes, no voices. Then the sheriff came. He wasn't a cruel man, just a weak one. His badge gleamed more than his backbone. Cole remembered him from years past, when law came at the price of silence and sins were weighed on scales that never favored the wounded. Cole, he said, not quite friendly, not quite hostile. You brought her back. I did. She's not supposed to be here. Neither was the rope. The sheriff glanced at Wren, then back at Cole. What's this about? She was tied to a tree, hung by her hands and left for animals. 3 men rode out from this town to do it. The crowd shifted, uneasy boots on porch steps. You got proof? The sheriff asked, low. I got her wrists, Cole said. I got her word. I got the moon that saw it all. That won't stand in court. I ain't interested in court. The silence cracked. A voice from the back, thin, nervous. What's she want? Wren stepped forward, slow, deliberate. I want my name cleared, she said. I want the ones who tied me up to admit what they did. Murmurs, the kind that slither rather than shout. She ain't got the right. She stole. She's lying. Wren didn't flinch. You think I hung myself, she said, her voice louder now, like it borrowed strength from every woman who'd ever been burned for being inconvenient. You think I bruised my own arms and painted my own blood across that tree? No one answered. Cole stepped up beside her. I'm not here to kill anyone, he said, but I've carried guns longer than I've carried regrets, and I can promise you, I know how to use both. The sheriff raised his hands. Easy now. No, Wren said, no more easy. She looked at every face, measured each one, then pointed. Denton's boy, he brought the rope. I saw him smiling. Jasper Mayfield, he called me witch, said justice would taste sweet. A stir, a step back, a few heads turned. Cole watched, ready. Then from the saloon door, Jasper emerged, eyes wide, face pale. She's lying. No, Cole said. You are. He stepped forward, rifle slung but hand steady. You tied her to die slow, and now you get to live with what that means. You'll walk free, maybe, but so will she. And if I so much as hear her name cursed in this town again, You'll learn what a man with nothing to lose really looks like." Jasper's mouth worked, but no sound came. Ren met his eyes, and for a moment he looked away. The crowd parted, not from fear, from something heavier, recognition. Ren turned, her posture tall. The noose that nearly killed her could never reach as far as she now stood. Cole offered his arm. She took it. And together they left the town behind. No longer victims, not quite victors, but something harder to name and twice as strong. Dawn didn't rise soft that morning. It cracked open like a whip. The sky, once silver and pale, turned sudden and bruised at the edges, like it had seen something coming before the earth had. Cole felt it before he saw it. A stillness in the trees that wasn't peace. A pause in the wind that wasn't mercy. He was on his feet in seconds, boots silent on the cold ground. The fire had died down to embers, but the smell still clung to the brush. Ren stirred, eyes fluttering, then snapped open. She sat up fast, the blanket falling from her shoulders. "You feel it?" he asked. She nodded, like something holding its breath. They didn't speak after that. Cole stepped away from the clearing, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the tree line. Ren reached into the saddlebag, pulled the small revolver he'd left there for her. She checked the chamber like he'd shown her 2 nights before. The shot came just as the sun breached the hills, one sharp crack that shattered the morning quiet like a pane of glass. Cole dropped to a knee, eyes narrowed. The bullet struck the trunk behind him, splintering bark inches from his head. "2 riders," he called, "coming fast." Ren scrambled to the edge of the rocks, crouched low. Her hands were steady now, her eyes clear. The first man burst through the brush on a chestnut gelding, rifle already raised. He wore a brown duster and a red kerchief tied loose around his neck. Behind him, a second rider, younger, more reckless, spurred his horse hard. Cole didn't hesitate. He squeezed the trigger once, clean. The first man fell backward, limbs flailing as he crumpled from the saddle. The second ducked low, wheeled his horse in a wide arc, and fired wildly toward the fire pit. Ren ducked, then returned fire, one shot that rang sharp and true. The bullet missed, but it startled the horse, which reared and threw the rider hard to the dirt. Cole rushed forward, gun raised, but the young man was already scrambling to his feet, hands raised, eyes wide. Wait, please," the boy shouted. "I didn't mean to. I was just—" Cole's jaw was clenched. His aim was steady, but his finger didn't squeeze. Not yet. "Who sent you?" The boy stammered. Jasper Mayfield. He said she was dangerous. Said there was money." Ren stepped forward now, face pale but resolute. She stood beside Cole, revolver pointed low but firm. "He said if we killed her, we'd be heroes," the boy whispered. "He said no one would care, that she wasn't—" He trailed off. Cole looked at Ren. Her eyes never left the boy. "You believe that?" she asked. Her voice was ice now, still, terrible in its calm. "I don't know what I believe anymore," the boy said. "But I ain't gonna shoot no one else. I swear it." Cole lowered his rifle. "Then ride. Now, and don't stop till you're out of this territory." The boy scrambled back onto his horse and galloped off without another word. They watched him go until he disappeared behind the ridgeline. Then silence fell again, thicker than before. Ren turned to Cole. "You could have killed him." "I could have. But you didn't." "I've done enough killing," he said, and the worst of it was always when I convinced myself it was justice. Ren holstered her revolver and stepped closer. Her fingers brushed the back of his hand, once, gently. "Thank you," she said. He met her gaze. "You're not the only one who hung all night, Ren. Just not by rope." She studied him, then slowly, quietly, rested her forehead against his chest. The dawn warmed around them, washing the blood from the dirt in golden light. And in that brief hush between violence and aftermath, they both understood, love born under fire doesn't come gently. But it stays. The sky stretched wide and cloudless above them as they rode south, the desert opening like a wound finally drying. Ren rode ahead now, Not because she led, but because she no longer feared what might wait around the next bend. Her back was straight, her eyes always moving. Not nervous, watchful. Cole followed close, reins loose in one hand, rifle slung but never far. His sides still ached from the fall he'd taken 3 nights prior. He didn't mention it. He doubted she'd care for the lie. They didn't talk much that morning, not because there was nothing to say, but because what needed to be known had already been written into the dust between them. Behind them, Harper's Bend stirred. Word had spread faster than riders. Jasper Mayfield had gone quiet. No men had followed since the dawn attack. The message had been clear enough. Cole Maddox had come back from the dark for a girl they'd tried to erase, and the girl didn't run. They camped that evening near a dry arroyo, the sun bleeding red into the far hills. Wren gathered kindling without instruction. Cole started the fire. They moved like 2 parts of the same machine now, worn but precise. He watched her as she worked, the way her fingers moved with purpose. There was still pain in her limbs, still nights when she flinched in sleep, but the rope had not taken her strength. It had revealed it. As they sat near the fire, she pulled something from her satchel, a small scrap of linen. She unwrapped it slowly, then handed it to him. Inside lay a broken chain, rusted, thin. "This was around my ankle," she said, "from before the rope." He turned it over in his hand, fingers rough against the cold metal. "You want me to throw it?" he asked. "No," she said. "I want you to keep it, to remember what was done, not to me, to all of us." He nodded, folded it carefully, placed it in the breast pocket of his coat, over his heart. They slept under the stars that night, close but not tangled. Respect, not retreat. Her hand found his sometime before dawn, curled quiet in his. The next morning, they reached the southern trail fork. One path veered east toward the border town of El Miro. The other curved into the mountains, old Apache territory. Land whispered about, but rarely found. Cole pulled the horses to a stop. "This is the choice," he said. "East means names and laws, paper and preachers, a town where we might be left alone, or not. And west. West is nothing written down. No law, no town, just open sky and people who don't need a reason to survive." She looked down the path leading into the hills. The morning light hit her cheekbones just right, like something carved out of earth and forgiveness. "I don't want to hide anymore," she said. "But I don't need to be seen either, not by men who never looked in the first place." He raised an eyebrow. "That a yes to the west?" She nodded. "It's a yes to you." They turned the horses. West. Hours passed, miles turned under hoof. The sun burned high, but they didn't slow. By dusk, the terrain grew rougher, stones jutting up like ribs under thin skin. Their pace eased. They crested a rise and saw it, a narrow basin shaded by cottonwoods, a spring-fed pool, glinting like a coin tossed by God. Cole dismounted, stretched his sore back. Wren joined him. Together, they walked toward the water. "Reckon this is home?" he asked. She took his hand. "Reckon it is." He smiled, small, real. "Never thought I'd find peace on the other side of a hanging." She looked at him. "You didn't." He frowned. She stepped close, reached for his hand, and pressed it to her chest, just over her heart. "You found it here." Cole's throat worked around something he couldn't name. He kissed her then, not with urgency, with weight, with reverence. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "We can build something here. No lies, no signs nailed to trees." "No chains," he added. "No ghosts." They pitched camp beside the spring, lit a fire that crackled like laughter waiting to be born. That night, as the stars spilled across the sky like spilled salt, they lay beside each other beneath a blanket stitched from more than cloth. It was made of every promise unspoken, and every bruise survived. And as Wren drifted off in his arms, her breath slow, her fists unclenched, Cole whispered into the dark, "Let them write songs about you, Wren. Not because you were saved, but because you survived yourself." She didn't answer, but in her sleep, she smiled. And if this story stirred something in your chest, if it reminded you that love doesn't always arrive clean or soft or on time, but when it does, it saves you like no rope ever could, then this is your place. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories. Hit the bell. Because out here, every heartbeat is a gamble, and every tale is worth remembering.